Well, hi, everybody, and welcome to Berea. Brendan Gulick reporting from the Cleveland Browns training facility with your daily practice report here on Browns Digest. It was a busy day, as Thursdays often are. We get a chance to talk with a couple players in the locker room. We hear from all three of the coordinators and get a chance to watch about the first half an hour of practice outside on an unseasonably warm day, certainly warmer here in Cleveland today than it's going to be in Seattle this weekend when the Browns head to the Pacific Northwest, where they haven't won in a long time, to go take on the Seahawks. Maybe, I guess you could call it a little bit of a surprise. I'm not sure we were expecting to hear from Deshaun Watson today. Deshaun eventually acknowledged that he didn't think it was that big of a deal that he didn't talk yesterday and talk today. He said in the past for him, it really wasn't so much about speaking on any specific designated day of the week, as long as he spoke at some point during the week. So maybe there was some miscommunication there. Because there was plenty made about him not talking yesterday and P.J. Walker being named the starting quarterback for this week. But Deshaun was gracious with his time today and spoke to the media for almost 15 minutes in the locker room and certainly fielded a lot of questions. The first of which was basically on whether or not he is frustrated by this whole situation and his desire to get back out on the field. Here's what he had to say.
Are you by the current situation?
What situation?
Just being injured in and out?
I mean, all I can really do is control what I can control. That's right now. It's just rehabbing, trying to come back as strong as possible, as soon as I possibly can. That's all I can really do right now.
Deshaun, how much did you rush it last week?
I don't know. I mean, the time limit for usually rotator cuffs are 4 to 6 weeks. I felt during the week that I had the opportunity to play. Right at that kind of 4 week mark. I just didn't have the strength and things like that to be able to go out there and play a full complete game. So, the medical staff, Kevin, decided to hold me out so I don't do anything worse to it.
The Browns coaching staff and Deshaun, I think both have been consistent in their message that they were all hopeful he was going to be able to play last week and that he would look much like himself. Ultimately, he didn't, right? And a lot of that was because of the fact that he was injured and had to come back out of the game. This is obviously a touchy subject right now. Browns fans want to see Deshaun on the field. He's been medically cleared to play, and so the question is, well, should we be questioning his toughness? Should we question his desire to play? And Deshaun has basically said, look, none of that is even relevant right now. Of course I want to play. If I don't actually say something, then don't worry about what other people are saying or what other people think or put out there. I'm trying to work my way back out onto the field. We've got a really close, tight locker room, and the guys have been really cool about making sure that I know that they've got my back. And pretty much to a man, everybody has said that publicly in the locker room when they've been asked about the situation and the frustration around the cohesion of what is out on the field. So internally, there's not a lot of turmoil. It's certainly more frustration maybe for the fan base, for sure. In terms of some additional clarity on exactly what happened on Sunday, Kevin Stefanski alluded to this a little bit, but perhaps there was some miscommunication because of the report on the TV broadcast. And so Deshaun will shine a little bit of light on this, but he didn't even realize when he was pulled off the field after the hit that knocked him out of the game, he did not realize that he was going to be evaluated for a concussion until several minutes after the fact, because he had already been cleared from the shoulder standpoint. So here's Deshaun addressing that part of the game.
I guess you cleared a concussion test or whatever. At what point, though, during that evaluation, did the shoulder become the concern and not a potential head injury?
The concern was the shoulder from the jump. I didn't know about the concussion until I went in the second time. So spotter from up top, and the lady came down, and that's when I came out, then I went back in, that's when we did the concussion thing. And I was surprised too. I didn't know that was concussion, because the whole time when I was down and the docs came over, we were speaking on the shoulder. So I cleared that. Then I tried to go back in. Then Kevin, AVP, and the docs came over and spoke to me, and wanted to go back in, but it's a team decision. And I felt like of course being the competitor, I wanted to play and try to push it through, but at the same time, what's like I said before many times, like what's going to be the best situation for the team? And the team is the best situation.
Deshaun Watson's made it clear he doesn't want to handicap the offense, and ultimately the decision was a collective one. I'm sure he wanted to be out there. He even acknowledged, I would rather be playing than not playing. But Kevin Stefanski, shouldered it this week and said, ultimately it's my decision, and I thought it was best for PJ Walker to go out and run the show offensively and give Deshaun more time to get 100%. So that's basically the latest info that we can give you that's legitimate from Deshaun, from Kevin Stefanski, from the Browns themselves, beyond what you might be reading or seeing out in the social media sphere for sure. We also talked with Amari Cooper, with Denzel Ward and Joel Bitonio today in the locker room. And if you're interested, those interviews are available on our Browns Digest YouTube channel. So if you subscribe to the channel, you can check out some content from those there. We also had a chance to talk with the three coordinators today, Bubba Ventrone, Alex Van Pelt, and Jim Schwartz. We've got cuts from a couple of those that we'll share with you, but not one from Bubba Ventrone today. Although I do think the two most notable things, one, he was exceptionally complimentary of Seattle's special teams unit. Their field goal unit is terrific. Jason Myers is one of the best kickers in the league. They've got a really, really good punt unit for sure. Seattle is no joke when it comes to playing the field position game. They're very good at it. And so he knows the Browns have to be at their absolute best. They often start periods of practice once you get through the stretching parts with some special teams work. And today the Browns were outside with music blaring on speakers on a cart right behind the punt unit to try to simulate what they're expecting to see this weekend as best they can. So they are certainly focused on what they're going to see up in Seattle. Thankfully, right now, it looks like it's going to be sunny and dry, but cool in Seattle this weekend as the Browns go take on a really determined Seahawks team. Obviously, Dustin Hopkins is continuing to kick really well, and that's great. And Corey Bojorquez has done a terrific job as the team's punter this year. So Bubba Ventrone's special teams unit is flying high. He also touched a little bit on Myles Garrett and the terrific field goal block. He said the play they called to block that field goal, they actually called it Indy. It was a play they specifically put in for this past week. He said, I've always got things up my sleeve, but you try to pick the right times to call things, and that was obviously one of the big Browns highlights of the season. Moving to Alex Van Pelt, the team's offensive coordinator. Obviously, he was asked an awful lot of questions about Deshaun Watson. I suppose maybe my biggest takeaway from that, AVP said, look, I can really identify and sympathize with what he's going through, because when I played, I also had some frustrating moments with a shoulder injury where I couldn't quite drive the ball to where I wanted to go. And he goes, nobody wants it more than Deshaun and us as a staff for him to be healthy and get back out there, because we know what he's capable of when he's at his best. And I know the Browns are really looking forward to that manifesting itself here sooner than later. That said, the team is also, maybe a bit surprisingly to some folks, without Nick Chubb, the team has continued to run the football well. First 2 weeks of the season, pretty gaudy rushing numbers. Obviously, Nick Chubb a big part of that. Chubb gets hurt. Browns in week 3 and in week 4 didn't run the ball quite as well. The last 2 weeks, though, obviously a big, long, explosive touchdown run from Jerome Ford. Kareem Hunt is working his way back from being a little bit banged up. Obviously, Ford is on the shelf right now with an ankle injury. And so that room is a bit thin. But I asked AVP today about the success of the running game as a whole, because right now they are second in the league in running the football. Alex, I want to ask you about the rushing attack. Obviously, the first couple of weeks with Nick healthy, there were some big numbers, but that room's obviously gotten a little bit thinner, and yet still effective, efficient, right now number 2 in the AFC rushing the ball. What do you generally attribute your rushing success as a team to right now?
It's a team, team stat for all of us. That's the receivers on the perimeter. That's everybody up front. That's the runners. We've always ran the ball well here. I think Coach Callahan, has great scheme, great technique in his teaching, where it's definitely a strength of ours. And then the guys that step in, Kareem really ran hard. The last 2 games, I was really proud of the way he's running the ball. And then Pierre comes in and he hits a couple big ones in that 2-minute drive. Jerome, the same thing there. So, it's a little bit by committee right now, but that's fine. We've got 3 backs right now. We'll get Jerome back. We'll have some guys up, this week. But I think it's a little bit of everything. We run the ball well. I think it's well coached here through scheme and technique, and our guys buy in.
Well, the Browns as a team certainly have done a nice job of running the football collectively, because it's clearly been one of those things where it can't just be one guy trying to shoulder the load in in a situation where the room has dealt with injuries the way that they have. So looking forward to seeing how the Browns try to run the football up in Seattle on Sunday. And the reality is they're going to face a Seahawks defense that's really clicking right now. Since week 4, Seattle has given up the fewest yards in the NFL defensively. None of their last 3 opponents have eclipsed 250 total yards of offense in either of those last 3 games. They're playing very well. Bobby Wagner leading the way, a guy who's been in the NFL forever. And AVP said, he's kind of haunted me. I feel like I've had an awful lot of really tough battles against him. The report out of Seattle today is that they've signed Frank Clark to potentially play defensive end, maybe even as soon as this weekend. So certainly with Draymond Jones as well, they've got some real depth and some really tough defensive players that the Browns are going to have to deal with on Sunday. Moving finally to Jim Schwartz, who obviously was gracious with his time again with the media today. He's always fun to chat with and listen to his thoughts on the way this team is performing. He called Myles Garrett's performance last week one for the ages. He also pointed out individually that he thought Jordan Elliott was playing perhaps the best football that he's played since he's come to Cleveland, and said he's made huge strides forward. But at the end of the day, it's about the fact that they're 4-2. He said he's not going to get out of character in that regard. He also basically said, look, it wasn't one of our best performances last weekend for sure. He said it was a little bit like, if you want to use a baseball analogy, since the World Series is coming, he goes, maybe you go 0 for 3 during the game with 3 strikeouts, and then you come up in the 8th inning and you hit a 3-run home run, and you can still make that big play late. He said we kind of try to put out fires one at a time throughout the course of the game, and every time we did, another one would pop up. And it was a bit frustrating, but ultimately they competed hard enough and made plays late. And he acknowledged that the one area the defense hasn't been particularly productive this year was in turnovers. That was huge in their favor this past Sunday in Indianapolis, with the Browns forcing a bunch of turnovers and actually winning the turnover battle for the first time here in 2023. So pleased in that regard. Last week, the team saw Gardner Minshew, who has had some magical moments for sure, but is not necessarily a super long, savvy veteran in the NFL. This week, they're going to play against a quarterback in Geno Smith, who is one of the longest tenured players in the league. He's seen a lot of different defenses. He obviously was the NFL's comeback player of the year last year, and there are certainly reasons to think Geno Smith is having a good year again this year. Jim Schwartz, very complimentary of what he's seen from Geno.
What do you see out of Geno Smith?
I see a veteran player that's sort of survived some of the bumps of some early setbacks. I think he's an inspiration to a lot of players that don't have immediate success. But his stick-to-itiveness, his ability to keep working, persevere, and obviously improve have shown these last couple of years. I remember having a conversation with him after a game he was playing with the Jets, and he was back up and hadn't played. And, I told him, I said, look, eventually you're going to get another chance, make sure you're ready for it. And because I had played him a couple times early in his career, and he certainly has. We're going to have our work cut out for him. He's throwing the ball very well. He's really efficient, very accurate with his passes, high completion percentage. And, I think that he's really, a good role model, a good inspiration for a lot of players that may have struggled early in their career. And if they stay on track and keep improving, that they can eventually have success.
It's such a great point. And Seattle, even their roster makeup is interesting because they have 15 rookies on their 53-man roster, which is tied for the most in the NFL. But they've also got some guys, much like Geno Smith, Bobby Wagner, who have been in this league for a very long time. You've obviously got a head coach in Pete Carroll and a staff that have been in this league for a long time. And so there's this mix of veteran presence and inexperience, although I don't know if I would call it youth, where I think Seattle is learning along the way as they're going, and a player like Geno Smith and a player like Bobby Wagner, who can be the focal point on both sides of the ball for them, can be huge in terms of trying to build something that's really sustainable. The reality is Geno Smith, he's got some skill position guys that are having really good years. Kenneth Walker, again, as a running back, has played really well. He's tough to tackle. And at wide receiver, you're talking about a group that's pretty dangerous when they're fully healthy. We'll see if DK Metcalf is able to play this weekend. Obviously, he's a stud. Ty Lockett's been in the league for a long time now. And Jackson Smith and Jigba is working his way onto the scene. A boatload of talent for a guy that played really well as one of Ohio State's best receivers in school history, and he scored a touchdown for the first time in the NFL last weekend. So Geno Smith leading an offense that is clicking, and they're coming off of a nice victory on Sunday last weekend. All right, so that wraps it up here for our Thursday coverage from Berea. Tomorrow, we are expecting to hear again on a normal Friday from a couple of assistant coaches at approximately 10:20 a.m. Eastern time tomorrow. Scott Peters, the assistant offensive line coach, will join the media at the podium, and Brandon Lynch, the cornerbacks coach, will also speak tomorrow. At that point, then the team will break away for practice at roughly 11:30, and when practice wraps up, Kevin Stefanski will talk afterwards. He'll give us the final thoughts there going into game week, and then the locker room will be open to speak with a couple more players tomorrow afternoon. For all the latest coverage on the Cleveland Browns, we hope you'll subscribe to this YouTube channel. We bring you lots of press conferences, media availabilities, and stand-ups just like this so that we can give you the latest news from the team. And certainly for all the latest written info, head over to BrownsDigest.com. I'm Brendan Gulick reporting in Berea. We'll see you soon over on Browns Digest.